Although possibly the least enticing vehicle of the three included in GT7's August update, for many players at least, I would urge you to kind of spoil the gist of this review to give this car a try. It is of course the 2016 shape Cayman GT4 from Porsche. It's the very first car you find in their dealership, at least for the moment, and unlike the other two in the pack, the McLaren and the Pontiac, it is not a legendary dealership car, so you can buy it at any time. It's also the cheapest of the three, at 130,000 credits, also making it of course the cheapest Porsche. Now with that in mind, the car is admittedly easy to overlook for I would say two primary reasons. One, it's a Cayman, so it's inherently not as enticing as a 911, again for most people at least, and secondly, because the other two cars are very showy. They are iconic in their own way. The Cayman, although great, isn't really an icon yet, at least for most people. I think we'd agree on that. The racing version of this, though, has been in a couple of Gran Turismo titles now, making its debut in GT Sport, of course carried over to GT7, and interestingly, but not surprisingly at all, because the regulations of Group 4 allow for the vehicle to be so similar to the road car in terms of spec, they're actually pretty consistent in terms of how they drive as well. Now of course the race car's faster, the performance points on that one are way higher, I believe up around the 640 region I think on the race car, whereas this one sits at 565, technically just under 566, so it's reasonable. It's not crazy, but it's reasonably high, the high mid region you could say, and in terms of power and weight, that is where it's really close. 379 horsepower, spot on for the race car. The weight though is about, I think it's 40 kilos if I recall correctly, more than the racing version. 1340 on this one, about 1300 on the race car. Of course, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, naturally aspirated. Now the fact that this is so close to the race car means it actually has a similar effect in many ways to how good the Volkswagen Beetle RSI was. In Gran Turismo's past, and some of you will remember this, OG Gran Turismo players, the Beetle Cup car, which was kind of like a lower level touring car, and the Beetle RSI had a lot in common. But interestingly, I think for many of us, I mean definitely for me, maybe for you too, I ended up using the road car way more, because that one even had a couple of advantages over the race car, such as four-wheel drive, but it just felt more useful. This could well be the case for many players in this game, because as great as the Group 4 category car is, the road car really could be a weapon. Because if you make a Group 4 car that handles like a Group 4 car, you're basically doing what you should be doing. If you make a road car that handles like a Group 4 car, well now we're talking, and that is the key advantage that this has over, at the very least, a number of its rivals in a similar power band, a similar kind of weight class, a similar kind of certainly performance point bracket, and it's clear of course that polyphony does favour Porsche, as they used to favour Nissan, as they kind of favour Toyota as well, although I would argue they might favour Porsche even more than Toyota in the past couple of games, but it's justified. You know, I used to be fairly indifferent to Porsche, then I started driving them in more games, and crucially I started driving a few of them in real life, and I started to get why people rave about them so much. So this is one of those occasions where, I mean, automotive nepotism or not, I totally agree with making them feel OP, because Porsches really are that good. Now this one I think is a really great addition actually to the game, because much like the lack of BMW M6 road car, the lack of updated Audi R8 road car, and of course the glaring omission of a mighty road-going Beetle, which is a shame, to some of us at least, this one just makes sense. Of course having a road car is something which we would have always wanted. In fact, many people would have probably preferred this over a race car if you had the option of both. With that in mind, I think the Cayman is simply put a no-brainer. There's not a huge amount to talk about in terms of winning you over to the car, because it's just really good. So give it a try, and I have no doubt you'll like it. The handling though, and the performance, to get more into how it feels if you haven't tried it yet, well, the weight balance is spot on, just like the race car. And one of the things that Porsche has done so well through the years is actually in particular, once again with the 911. Having a car that's of course originally developed from the Beetle platform with that rear engine rear drive layout gives you such a specific set of challenges to make a car like that good, even close to drivable. at any kind of high speed at least, but they've been doing it for so long and refining the concept that now the 911, I mean, it's always been, but now especially, it is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, it's a race car for the road at this point. This, although mid-engine instead of rear-engine, clearly and of course borrows so much of what they've learned from the 911 and puts it into this platform which is just that little bit more beginner friendly. Having the mid-engine layout makes it even more predictable and even better balanced than a rear drive 911, which is itself already fantastic. So of course this car is great. At the same time though, it's way more hardcore, inherently has a far stiffer frame thanks to the hardtop than something like a Boxster would have, so it's naturally suited to having this kind of GT4 treatment. I personally think this is a lovely little car in the game, and even though it's definitely easy to just think, oh yeah, we've got the road car, that's cool, let's move on to next month, I really would urge you to give this one a try. It could well be a car that if you do just a few minimal tuning changes to, maybe a couple of parts here and there, especially of course a little bit of weight loss, stiffen up the springs a bit, maybe more powerful discs and pads, perhaps some changes in gearing, but even then, not necessarily, and of course changing the tyres to make them that much better, well, you've basically got yourself a race car with a number plate. Taking it here around the Nordschleife, it was wonderful. You can see from the start of the video right at the bottom of the screen, the mileage was brand new. This was the first time I ever drove the car, and immediately I felt familiar with it. It's just that kind of car. It's lovely to work with, it's a ton of fun as well, and it's cars like this where, as often as I criticise it, games like GT Sport and GT7 do actually shine, because making a Porsche feel as good as a Porsche does in real life is no small task, and I believe they did a really good job in the case of the 911s and these. This car should feel like this because this is the kind of fun experience I've had with real Porsches in Beards and Cars. So the fact that they've carried over that kind of spirit into the game, I think is fantastic. It's one of the, I guess, fewer things wherein people could say that I, of all people, genuinely praise Polyphony, because they did do a great job. Overall then, give the car a try if you haven't already. It's not exactly like it's a huge amount to pay out, and of course check out my reviews for the aforementioned Pontiac and the McLaren, which I already put out on the channel, and of course we'll have to wait and see for next month what the new vehicles are. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.